Rocket Ethereal here. Today my goal is to get good at Starcraft II co-op or die trying. Now, this is my intermediate video, which means that I have successfully crossed the gap between the normal and hard co-op difficulty, so now I'm playing on the hard co-op difficulty. Admittedly, I am not speaking live over this video. I found that when I tried to narrate what I was doing while I was playing on hard difficulty, I was unable to focus enough, and it was really affecting my performance. So this is just me commenting on the game that I just played. I'm playing with a random person whom I do not know, but it's worth noting that my partner is level 15, which is the maximum that you can level up a character. There's 6 different heroes for Starcraft II co-op, and each one has specific abilities that pertain to their race or the character itself. So in my case, I'm using Kerrigan, and when I started this game, I was at level 7. But because 15 is the maximum, my partner has a lot of stats and upgrades that I do not have access to, especially because he's playing a different race, but that's beside the point. He is over leveled for this difficulty. And you'll see what I mean, because he's only going to have his one base. He's not actually going to expand into the provided expansion space, and what that's going to result in is me just casually expanding into both of the expansion spaces because, well, what the heck, why not? He wasn't using it, he didn't need it, because he made it through the entire game with a very, very small force. So what I did was I was very aggressive about producing drones and getting a second hatchery up as soon as possible. The reason for that second hatchery is to spawn larvae much faster, because you get one immediately when the hatchery spawns, and then, well, I mean, the rate is doubled because you're getting larvae from 2 different hatcheries. And the reason I want so many drones is because, well, as a zerg, every drone that is used to build a building, well, the drone evolves into the building itself, because zerg are amazing and badass like that, which means that that drone will need to be replaced in order to keep my resource mining at maximum efficiency. You'll also notice I got the spawning pool up as soon as I possibly could. And the reason for that is because I wanted to turn my hive into a lair. The benefit of turning my hive into a lair is that I can build some of the advanced buildings, well, the advanced drone evolutions that are necessary for hydralisks, mutalisks, and other advanced units. But I've found it effective to just mass one kind of unit, with little exception. There are some missions and some enemies on the hard difficulty that will send cloaked units your way. And for the zerg to detect cloaked units, they have to build spore crawlers, which are the anti-air stationary turrets. They can walk around, but they can't shoot until they're burrowed into the ground, and those are great for detecting invisible units. Or you can evolve your overlords into overseers, but they're still defenseless, so it's really inconvenient dealing with stealthy units as zerg. Luckily, I'm dealing with zerg here, and zerg do not have stealthed units, which means I don't have to build any detectors. And for this entire game, I'm just going to build some zerglings very early on, like right now, and once I have the means to start building hydralisks, I'm going to build nothing but hydralisks. I'm just going to amass a huge, unstoppable hydralisk force. There's something really satisfying about moving a huge swarm of hydralisks up close to an enemy, so that what happens when you bring a bunch of hydralisks to attack an enemy is the hydralisks will form an arc around the targeted enemy and just start shooting it at their maximum range, right? But what that means is that all the other hydralisks in your crowd are just like shuffling around behind the hydralisks that are actually doing damage because they are too far away to deal damage. The solution to that, of course, is to move the crowd closer to your enemy, and then the moment I right-click on an enemy, just all hell absolutely breaks loose, because there's just hundreds of needles flying through the air and instantly killing the toughest enemies this game has to offer. Now, I don't know how much work I need to do in order to be able to handle the brutal difficulty, but it's very clear that I'm not quite able to do hard mode in my sleep yet. And the experienced Starcraft II player, or even the amateur, is probably going to see a lot of places where I'm paying attention to the wrong thing, where I am missing opportunities. It's really just all over the place. And so in addition to leveling Kerrigan up from level 7 to 15, I'm really going to need to master my macro management, because my macro management is just inexcusably awful. Well, maybe not inexcusable. Realistically speaking, I have only spent a few hours playing the Starcraft II co-op, and that was with virtually no Starcraft II experience. I do not do the PvP or even comp stomps. I've just gotten about a third of the way through the Heart of the Swarm campaign. I haven't even touched the campaign since the beginner video that I filmed for this. One of the bigger mistakes I made in this game was building a bunch of drones and sending them up to that expansion space too early. If you were paying attention, you might have caught that. I kind of had just several drones sitting there, unable to do anything, because I already had all of the drones I could have harvesting resources at my first 2 hatcheries, and that really that was a huge waste of minerals, frankly. Of course, as far as resources go, and you're going to see this happen as well, I'm just going to amass thousands of resources. I'm going to amass so much mineral and Vespine that I'm literally not going to be able to spend it all. Quite frankly, it got a bit boring for me going through this. Maybe this mission is just one of the easier ones, because I've definitely struggled more with some of the other co-op missions. But you know, every time I queue up for a co-op mission, I'm queuing up for a random one, and I don't know what I'm going to get. But having played all of them, I would say that this is probably the easiest. I'm not sure how much my assessment is worth, so take that with a grain of salt, because I'm just not very experienced, despite being able to successfully play this game on the hard difficulty in the co-op mode. So I moved my forces down to prepare for the train to come through, but what I didn't realize was that all of the bonuses that my partner had, being level 15, meant that he could build an extremely small base that's mostly composed of stationary turrets. I believe Swanson's turrets are the Flaming Betty, and I can't remember what his other turret is, but he would just lay down a bunch of those along this track, and they would handle all except for the last train that comes through. In case you're behind here, the objective of this map is to stop these trains from coming through. Each of the main trains, which go along 2 tracks, there's one track above our base and one below it. Obviously you're looking at the one below it. And if a main train reaches the other side of the map, reaches the right side of the map, then we lose. But every main train is also accompanied with an attacking force, and these attacking forces will also come with a small wave of hybrid enemies. Hybrid enemies are powerful combinations of Zerg and Protoss that have lots of health and some very special abilities. The hybrids that we see more than anything in this map have the ability to lift multiple enemy units into stasis bubbles and make them unable to act. Of course, I'm playing Zerg, and Zerg is all about crowding your enemy with tons of units, which makes those particular hybrids rather ineffective. Right now, I'm kind of just monitoring my logistics, trying to make sure that all of my stations are manned, and I'm trying to spread out my creep as much as possible. Kerrigan earns an ability relatively early on in the co-op mode that will grant bonuses to all friendly Zerg units that are on creep. And so the Swarm Queens, which are the 150 mineral cost single units that you can spawn from hatcheries, those are actually excuse me, those are actually insanely valuable. There's 3 reasons for that. One is because they are able to spawn new creep clusters. A creep cluster is the little node from which creep will spawn in a huge quantity. You place one down and creep will just spread out in a radial area from that particular node. But then every creep cluster also has the ability to spawn one other creep cluster, just one, not more than one. But what that means is that you can establish long chains of creep clusters from placing just a single cluster. And that's one of my favorite things about the Zerg, is sort of their ability to establish, shall I say, advantaged ground over huge distances in a relatively short period of time. Of course, the Queen can continue to lay down creep clusters, which is great if you need to put creep in multiple directions, which I did in this instance. You can see I've spread creep both above my base and below it in efforts to spread the buffs around as much as possible. The second reason that Swarm Queens are awesome is because of their ability to instantly spawn extra larvae on a hatchery or lair or hive. That main production building that spawns the larvae. I believe the ability is it spawns 4 larvae that will hatch in 45 or 60 seconds, and it's just a huge boost to your unit count for extremely little cost. It just costs 25 energy on the part of the Swarm Queen, like both of her other abilities. The third reason the Swarm Queen is great is because she can speed up the regeneration of your armies, especially if Kerrigan has taken a lot of damage, and I've definitely had some games on the hard difficulty where Kerrigan has been super damaged or I've lost her entirely. The Swarm Queen has just a straight heal that is a single target for 125 health, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it is fantastic in a pinch, and it just makes the Swarm Queen a great early game investment, whether you are trying to rush out a faster military or you're trying to establish more creep spread. You can see I was starting to get a little bored here because this is when I decided to expand to my partner's expansion space. On every co-op map, there are 2 what I like to call expansion spaces. There are 2 locations that have all the minerals and Vespene of the base that you spawn with. So it's just more resources that are just waiting for you to go capture them. This is also something that you'll see in standard melee maps, which are either PvP or players versus AI, where it's just basically the core game. You start with minimal resources, you have all units available to you, and you build up an army and try to destroy your enemy. And normally, the reason there's 2 expansion spaces is because there's one for you and one for your partner, and you each just try to take advantage of them as fast as possible. But as I've already said a couple of times, my partner is level 15, and if you will see this a few times. Look at that right there. He just has a bunch of Goliaths and a few turrets holding off the main objective and the nasty hybrids that are coming with it. It's kind of ridiculous. But it also kind of makes me wonder just how difficult Brutal is, that he felt the need to come play hard instead of playing on Brutal and basically win the game with such low effort. I mean, he doesn't even bother trying to expand beyond his single little base, because he has no reason to. I don't think he even reached his supply cap of 200 units. I honestly don't think he did. I could be wrong. I'm not sure how much supply each individual Goliath takes out. Another error that you'll see me making a lot is failing to manage my overlords and supply well. There's a lot of times during which it would be just great for me to start manufacturing overlords so I don't actually max out my supply cap before I reach 200. But I keep doing that. I do that like 3 or 4 times throughout this game. And it's a huge pain in the ass because I just have not gotten the hang of it yet. I'm sure there's some sort of rule of thumb that I'm missing, but I just haven't figured it out. At this point, I'm just making drones for the heck of it. It's like, there's not a whole lot else for me to do. I just queued up a ton of overlords, and there's a bunch of minerals and Vespene sitting there, but honestly, look at my resources. I don't even need that stuff. What I need to do is I need to figure out the things I did right in this game, and I need to really replicate that over to every succeeding game until I turn hard difficulty into what normal difficulty was for me. That is to say, make hard as easy and boring as possible. That doesn't sound very fun, honestly, but honestly, it seems like it's the only way I'm going to be able to handle brutal difficulty. I suspect that I'm going to have to get to the point where I can do hard difficulty in my sleep while juggling something in my free hand, just to handle brutal in general. But I'm also kind of making the assumption that it is actually straight up difficult and not simply scaled to your character's level. If you look at the difficulties on the difficulty selection screen, obviously you can't see that right now, I'm just telling you what it looks like. The description for brutal is you will not survive. Traditionally, this is the kind of description that you see when you try to play veteran difficulty on Call of Duty. And in Call of Duty, well, that's the case. You will not survive. You will die almost instantly. And so I like to think that when a developer tells you you're not going to survive, they mean this is hard. Be prepared to get your ass kicked if you don't know exactly what you're doing. I really do enjoy that kind of challenge, which is the whole reason I'm doing this kind of series to begin with. At least one of the reasons. Look at my buddy here with all his silly little Goliaths. I noticed that he was actually really abusing some of his active abilities, and I know that Swanson, his character, has some active abilities. I'm just not entirely certain what they are, but I think that's one of the reasons that he was able to get by without building very many units. Swan, not Swanson. Look at that, I don't even know what his name is. This is how much I know about the other two races. I feel kind of silly because I actually played all the way through Wings of Liberty as well, but I suppose Wings of Liberty was quite a long time ago. And in case you're not familiar with that, that was the core Starcraft II game. So the way that they released Starcraft II was in a trilogy. So the core game was Wings of Liberty, which had the Terran campaign in it. The expansion, the first expansion, was Heart of the Swarm, which is what I own, and has the Zerg campaign, and then they just released Legacy of the Void, which has the Protoss campaign, and which I do not own. But if I want to ace the StarCraft II co-op, which is what I traditionally do in Get Good or Die Trying videos, I will have to buy Legacy of the Void because for some reason they locked 3 of the 6 heroes for co-op behind owning Legacy of the Void, which means I only have access to Raynor, Kerrigan, and I think Zeratul is the Heart of the Swarm accessible Protoss hero. And that's going to be interesting because, as I've said multiple times, I really have no experience with the other two races. Well, when I say no experience, I mean it's just been way too long since I played Wings of Liberty for me to know how to effectively fight with the Terrans. Honestly, though, I find the Terrans kind of boring. I'm not sure. They feel somewhat generic to me, but that may just be compared to the Zerg, which are such an exciting and exotic alien race, and the Protoss, which are very much the same. Blizzard did something very creative with the original StarCraft in their world building and their establishment of these 3 very distinct races. Regarding Kerrigan's active abilities, I have to say that her W I have just found to be the best thing in the world because it is a damaging line AoE, which it's primarily what you're going to see me using on her if you've been paying attention at all, because it does enough damage that she will instantly kill all Zerglings that it strikes, and she will heavily damage Hydralisks, Roaches, anything that's not super heavily armored, such as a hybrid tank. And compared to her other abilities, the other abilities that actually cost energy, it just seems to be the most effective far and away. What you're discovering what you're looking at right now is I have reached my maximum supply, and I'm like, okay, what the heck do I do now? I can't build any more Hydralisks. I just killed off some of my drones. with my Hydralisks because they were taking up too much supply. I have too many resources. I can't spend them all. So what you're seeing right now is me discovering that I can create more military might without more supply by turning my drones into spore crawlers and spine crawlers. The spine crawlers are these ground targeting turrets that attack by lashing out of the ground. So when you evolve a drone into a spore crawler or a spine crawler, you get the supply for that drone refunded to you. You basically pay 75 minerals to create a turret and free up a supply slot. I am guessing that that is going to play pretty significantly into succeeding in brutal mode, just because it seems like the kind of advanced tactic I would have to use. Remember what I was saying about Hydralisk positioning? Yeah, that is why I moved my Hydralisk so far out before I started to attack, because if I had just right-clicked the train from far away, I would have just had a very small wall of Hydralisks, with a very huge cluster of useless Hydralisks all running around behind them. That was the final train. So that was, like I said, it was pretty easy, and I honestly don't think that my partner factored into that very much. I think that the average partner on hard difficulty actually would do more than that partner did, because he just picked a spot and he sat there, and he actually needed my help to finish off that last train. I was kind of the reason we won that to begin with. This whole leveling structure thing is very strange to me, just because there's vertical progression in what is definitely a static environment. You know, the game doesn't change beyond having different difficulties, but you literally grow more powerful as you play the game. And you can see here all the 6 heroes and their levels. You can see that the 3 heroes for Legacy of the Void are locked because I don't own Legacy of the Void. But I still have a lot of work to do. You know, I'm thrilled to know that I'm able to handle hard difficulty effectively, but oh man, I'm really in this for the long haul. So I guess wish me luck. Until next time, this is Rocket Ethereal signing off.